Leach with the Palm Beach County Office of Resilience. Thank you for joining me for the final group panel of the Climate Summit. But first, we'll be seeing the last of our Palm Beach County Resilience highlight videos. This time, we'll be hearing from Commissioner Mac Bernard. Go ahead, please.
And climate change is so important for the residents of District 7 and pretty much the whole residents of Palm Beach County, because as we're, population in Palm Beach County is climbing, but we also have to be mindful of protecting our environment, so in that way we can make sure that we live a better county for the future kids and for future generation. The strategic alliances in regards to Monroe County, Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach County will come together in terms of making sure that we have more of a positive impact to reduce the costs and the burden of climate change. Well, first of all, I want to thank the young folks who are part of this Climate Summit, because it's so important for the young folks to care about our climate, and so in that way they can continue to pass it on to the next generation. So I want to thank them for joining, but at the same time they have to really help us in terms of addressing climate changes. We're having hurricanes that are stronger, and so that's going to impact the future of the state of Florida. And also the affordable housing that we're dealing with. A lot of our young students are not able to afford housing, and how we tackle the housing crisis and also making sure that they have a safe, affordable housing that will be just as important for our young kids. Palm Beach County is so rich in resources. If you're in my district, you can go in Delray Beach and go to the marketplace in Delray Beach, and you can come up north to downtown West Palm Beach. You have the Convention Center, the Kravitz Center, you have the Northern Museum, you have the Breakers, Mar-a-Lago. You have so many different places in the county.
Thank you, Commissioner Bernard. Your mention of working together with our neighbors and young people is a perfect introduction to our next panel. Today we've got resilient people and places, building strong, inclusive communities. In this session, we'll be hearing about how community groups and leaders are building strong, inclusive, resilient communities. I'd also like to remind you that you can enter any questions you have for the panel into the Q&A box, and we'll try and get to as many of those as we can. Now I'd like to welcome our moderator for this panel, Ms. Jamie Cole. Ms. Cole is Program Director for Southeast Campaigns at the Energy Foundation. Previously, Ms. Cole served as Policy Manager for Environmental Justice, Air Quality and Materials for the North Carolina Conservation Network. And prior to that, she was Public Policy and Legal Redress Coordinator for the North Carolina NAACP, where she also served as Interim Executive Director. More information about the panelists can be found in their bios, which are posted below this video. Ms. Cole, it's over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Dr. Leach shared, I'm Jamie Cole, and I'm very happy to be here with you this afternoon. I am from the Energy Foundation. I am with the United States Energy Foundation Southeast region, and we recently at Energy Foundation revised our mission, vision, values, and a part of that mission, vision, and values includes centering equity in the way we fund work in the Southeast and across the country. And so this particular panel is very near and dear to the work that we're endeavoring to do and wanting to learn more about. So I'm looking forward to learning from the panelists today. And I am pleased to introduce our panelists. I will just give a short intro into who they are. Ali Bayat, Director of Water Utilities Department, Palm Beach County Board of County Commissioners. And Michelle Mahia, AVP, Health Promotion and Strategic Partnerships, West Kendall Baptist Hospital, and Joanna Lombard, professor at University of Miami School of Architecture. So I am very pleased to have our panelists with us today, and I will jump right into questions. And so we have some really exciting questions that I'm hoping will spur some questions from you all in the audience. So the first question is for all of our panelists. Can you each tell us a little bit about the projects you are involved in? Who was involved and what community benefits were integrated into the design of the project, or what benefits were a direct result of the project? And I will kick it to Michelle first.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. And so I'm going to take this question and really put it into the present tense, because it's definitely a project that is ongoing. And to start telling you that when West Kendall Baptist Hospital opened its doors a little over 10 years ago, we immediately realized that we also had an awesome responsibility to take care of the community that we serve. So to put it a little bit in context, West Kendall Baptist Hospital is located on the western edge of Miami-Dade County. It is part of unincorporated Miami-Dade, and we service around close to 400,000 people. I often say if we were a city, we would be one of the largest in Florida. But West Kendall Baptist served as a convener to bring together community leaders from local government to our local police, academia, school board, local businesses, and non-for-profits, for just to name a few. We're 8 years strong already. And so this group created the movement that we call Healthy West Kendall. And together we created a shared vision to create this thriving and vibrant community out in West Kendall. So once again, we serve as bringing people together. And the benefits, I think, are the result of us being chosen to participate in this national collaborative that uses the Baldrige framework, the Malcolm Baldrige framework. It's a quality framework that we have adopted it to see if it is as successful in a community setting as it has been in many other industries. And so what is built into what we're doing are 4 pillars, and those are economics, education, safety, and quality of life. So all of our initiatives have that focus, and each one has action plans, strategic plans, goals, metrics. And I'd just like to take 1 second to highlight one of the initiatives that is actually coming from the quality driver. And that was, and that is what we call our Healthy Hub, which is a wellness kiosk. And we use the American Heart Association's Life Simple 7. So what we've done is removed all barriers to care, so our residents can come in and get an assessment of their health. To date, over 29,000 screenings have been performed. And that's just one example under one pillar of what we're doing and accomplishing together. So I ended up by saying Healthy West Kendall is a story of us, of an entire community. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I will turn it over to Joanna to answer that question.
Thank you, Jamie. Great to be here and with Michelle. I've been to her Healthy Hub. It's fantastic. So is that hospital. Baptist has done like a beautiful job there. And they've embraced the idea that healthcare can be a catalyst for community health and change. And so the planning of the community around it is a really important part of what the healthcare system is doing. So extra points for that too, Michelle. So I want to, yeah, Ali is clapping for you back there too. I'm really one person that represents a whole bunch of people. And I would say the most important or the most immediate thing that I'm working on right now is I'm part of a team called Hyperlocalism. The University of Miami launched a program, the Laboratory for Integrated Knowledge, And the idea behind this was to encourage faculty from all across the university to come together to focus on something that was community oriented, where we could bring research and practice together. So our team looked at the conditions of climate change, and there's a conventional system that everyone on this call knows about, where people come from different areas and you have consultants and you kind of analyze what needs to be done in an area. And then there are usually public meetings to propose these ideas to the public and see what people think. And we are made up of a team. We have a geoscientist and an ocean scientist and a communication studies person and an ArcGIS person and a reference librarian who's very embedded in community narrative. And when we got together, we said, we think there might be a better way, because many communities, in spite of multiple meetings, don't necessarily feel that they were engaged. They might be consulted sort of the end of the process, but are they engaged in imagining their own process? And so we came up with a method of photo voice, using photo voice and design thinking to see if we could identify neighborhoods. And we call ourselves hyperlocal because the idea of neighborhoods is that depending on your geological and social features, their neighborhood could be a couple of blocks, or it could be, a much larger area. So we did 5, working with our partners, the Clio Institute and Catalyst Miami, and then our partners in Miami-Dade County, the Office of Resilience and members of the Department of Parks, Recreation, and Open Spaces. We held community sessions in Overtown, Liberty City, Allapattah, Homestead, and Little River with people from those communities who told amazing stories through their photos, who then got together through design thinking and made propositions in partnership with people in the county for ideas that really enhance life, deal with climate adaptation, but also deal with the larger exigencies of life. So there's a lot going on. I also work on a public health team that's looked at greenness impacts. We have a lot of data. I think everybody knows this intuitively. Greenness is good for us, but we've been out there proving its association with various diseases. So I think there's a lot going on in general, but today we'll probably talk a little bit more about the climate specific actions.
Thank you so much, Joanna. And I see a question that I think, Michelle, if you don't mind naming the national initiative that you mentioned, we have a question about that.
Sure, it's called Communities of Excellence 2026. And what they have done is set out to find communities that are looking to adapt this framework to prove that it will work in a community setting. So I believe there's over 25 communities now, and we were selected as part of the initial cohort of 5 that started out 5 years ago.
Thank you, Michelle. And thank you for that question. So Ali, could you answer that question and tell us about the projects that you're involved in?
Sure. Oh, it's great to be with this panel, though I already learned a lot from the 2 previous speakers. I appreciate it both. I'm Ali Bayat. I'm the Director of Palm Beach County Water Utilities. If you don't mind, I'm going to give 1 minute, just a background of the utility, then I'm going to go to the project that I'm going to expand on. So we are the 3rd largest utility in the state of Florida, Miami being the largest one, of course. We do have about 600,000 people that we serve them on a daily basis. And pretty much we serve half of the Palm Beach County. We are a full service utility that provide water services, wastewater, as well as reclaimed water, which reclaimed water is the wastewater being treated to the high levels that it can be used for the irrigation purposes or industrial use or any other benefits to the communities, which I'm going to speak about it. Also, we are the only large utility in Southeast Florida that we are in full compliance with all the different requirements as far as the regulations goes. In addition, we just became the first utility in the nation to be certified for our asset management and our capital improvement projects. So that's pretty much about utility and where we are. As a utility, one of our jobs is to make sure there is enough clean water for the people that we're serving now and also for the people that coming to us for the next 10, 20, 30 years. In Florida, we are the #1 destination for a lot of people in the country. The population keep growing, and the environmental resources, to be honest with you, is getting impacted every day. So we realized that way back when, 20, 30 years ago, that we have to do something to be able to have a sustainable operation. So county made a decision to go to the direction to not letting getting anything wasted. So we have started with collecting the wastewaters from all of our residents, started changing them to something more beneficial instead of getting rid of them or put them in the ocean or dumping it down to the deep well injections. We came up with 2 beautiful, beautiful wetlands. If you ever been in Palm Beach County, the 2 wetlands I'm talking about is Green Cay and is Wakutahatchee. There's about 1.2 million people that come visit these 2 beautiful wetlands every year. Very populated. We've used the wastewater that we treated to the safe levels. We put it back in the nature. We use the wetlands to take over the nitrogen and phosphorus, and also beautiful park for the community. So it's a win-win for the environment, for the public, and for the utilities. We also expand our projects. We provide every day 15 to 20 million gallons of water to FP&L for using in industrial sites. So we've been doing this over the past 20 years. Our goal is eventually for every gallon of water that we take it from the ground, we put 1 gallon back in terms of clean wastewater. We produce energy from the wastewater. But about 2-3 years ago, we realized that we need to take it to the next level. And this is the project that I'm going to talk about it. We call them Green Cay Phase 2. It's located in the heart of Palm Beach County. If you're familiar with Palm Beach County, it's right at the Jog Road and Flavor Peak. That's where the other 2 wetlands also are. But this time, we decided to take it to the next level by using the technology to pretty much producing a good water at the standard of drinking water and put it in the lake, so that lake can receive continuous flow of clean crystal water from a wastewater facility. So this is a project that this type of projects has been used and built, and it is in operation in California, in Texas, a couple of the other states, never been in Florida. We're gonna be the first utility in the state of Florida that we're gonna have a plan to produce good drinking water out of the wastewater. But this is not going to be the water we're going to give it to the public. We're still going to put it in the environment to use the environment as a buffer, but that's going to put us in that world-class utilities that we can support our communities the best that we can. Also, for this project, we're going to create a new park, which has about 50 acres of lakes in it and all the other amenities. And the water from the plant, after being purified, is going to go to these lakes, and public going to come and enjoy that park and that project.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much. And so I'm going to now direct specific questions to each one of you. And after that, we'll open it up to the questions from the attendees. So I'll go back to you, Michelle. And as anchor institutions, what role do you think hospitals play in helping local governments advance their climate goals and helping elevate the conversation around public health and climate?
So happy to respond to that, but first, inspired by the other panelists, honestly, I want to be a part of Joanna's project. So count us in. So the role of an anchor institution, I really believe it's to lead by example. And West Kendall Baptist Hospital actually achieved LEED Gold Green Building certification 10 years ago. And that really demonstrates our commitment to environmental sustainability in the areas of energy conservation, water, lighting, the building used recycled materials, and we continue to expand the amount of EV stations around our campus. But the other thing that we've done, we received actually a bicycle friendly designation, and we partnered with other organizations to enhance facilities for cyclists at our bus transit hub. And that includes bike storage and air pumps and the like. So what we're hoping to do is to improve that mobility and connectivity between bicyclists, pedestrian, and those that are using our public transportation. But it's also about thinking differently and being innovative in what we do. And I'm really proud that West Kendall Baptist Hospital, through Healthy West Kendall, is actually the first hospital to have a medical legal partnership in place. And what that means is that through Legal Services of Greater Miami, we have assigned an attorney to our patients. So our clinicians and our physicians and case management have been trained to look for legal barriers to improve health for our patients. And those can be in the area of improving even climate resilience. So for example, helping a patient that might come back to the emergency room for asthma, exacerbation of asthma, and to find out that perhaps that their air conditioner is not being repaired by their landlord, or they have mold in the building. So I think it's a way to partner with others and to think differently about what our role and responsibility is to the community.
Thank you. Y'all, I mean, I'm just getting inspired listening to each of you. So I'm taking notes and listening for our work as a foundation that is thinking about supporting work that is transformational and that overlaps and is intersectional. It's just all very exciting. So thank you. I'll before I keep going, I'll kick it now back to Joanna. I have a specific question for you. Did you see a difference in the level of engagement of project participants by the end of the photo voicing project? And do you think that photo voicing is a good way to engage community members in a large scale climate resilience projects, and how can it be done?
Okay.
So it's a big question, sorry.
No, I mean, it's all great, actually. And it kind of ties with the one that came in on the chat too, about how do you encourage community members. So first of all, yes to seeing a difference. For people who don't know what Photo Voice is, essentially, the idea behind Photo Voice is that we use photos to tell stories. And so people will come together with this, maybe we ask people for like 3 or 4 stories, and I can put a link to our website so you can see more of this, but that they felt represented things that they feel or concern or love about their neighborhoods. And then as the group talks, certain common themes emerge. And then that transitions into a design thinking mode. And what's great about design thinking isn't about like a specific thing, like I need a sidewalk. Design thinking is about the fact that when I go out walking with my baby or my elderly parent, we can only go so far. And we'd like to be able to go out and meet neighbors. So it's like, okay, then what's the ideal condition to do that? So now you've had the photographs that kind of tell the story, and those images speak to all of us, pretty powerfully. So we get a little window into everyone's experiences and lives. And then we frame what we think would be the ideal for our neighborhood. And then we figure out, well, what are ways to get there? And we use a kind of impact effort matrix to measure what those are. And then our last exercise is to figure out, well, who do we need to help us get there? And this is where it's really inventive, because we come up with all kinds of people that we might not have thought of as partners, a church group or, a school or a hospital, who can be our partners in what we might want to do. So that's one thing. So then, does it engage people in large scale projects? Yes, to the extent that if people start noticing, that there's a sort of flooding pattern and there may be a problem in a park, and those two things start to come together, you can start to get green solutions for these things. And then that might put green infrastructure above gray infrastructure based on its ability to improve quality of life. And then circling back to the point about how community members engage, I think part of that is that's where community partners are so important. We're not a bunch of researchers kind of parachuting in, but for example, we worked with Catalyst, and Catalyst had Anna Russo-Lash, who put together the group in Homestead, and Nicole Crooks, who worked with us. We had Mama Joy in Liberty City. So we had amazing people who were the leaders. Olivia Collins brought together the group in Little River and Allapattah. And so when you have trusted leaders who already have people in the community, and then our team really believes honestly in incentivizing people. When people are coming and giving you their expertise, which is their life experience, then there should be an incentive to doing that. It's financial, or it's a skill, or it's something. And then last point on that is that we actually launched all this right when the pandemic hit. Like our first community session was supposed to be March, the middle of March 2020. And you all know that was like when the world shut down. So we transitioned to Zoom. We weren't sure that people would still do it, but in some ways we made the sessions very compact. And people logged in. I think you mentioned in this, Jake mentioned earlier, people logged in on their, from a car. We had people logging in, and the kids were there and the dogs were there. And it was actually kind of great because instead of being in a room, we were sort of windows into each other's worlds. So I think all of that brought it all together and it made it real. And then final point, I think for the people in county government, they're so accustomed to going to meetings where citizens have something to complain about. Because like, why do we get up and go to a meeting if we're happy? If we're happy, we're kind of busy. So we tend to go to a meeting because like, we want some help here. So this was an opportunity to come together in a really constructive and positive way, but also a personal way. So it's not just this neighborhood. Now it's this person who misses that tree that got cut down and, should have stayed there, things like that. So I think it's a very good way to bring us together on a kind of ground where we can share ideas and values and help each other.
Thank you, Joanna. And I think that's an excellent point. It's so interesting how timing works out, right? Everyone was looking to have more connection and something positive to be able to talk with each other about and work with each other on. So this, I think some things just happen the way they're supposed to. And it sounds like that was beneficial in 2020, especially. Thank you. I will kick it to Ali now. I have a specific question for you. Palm Beach County's Water Utility Department is expanding the Green K project with a new phase. Can you tell us a little more about what phase 2 will entail and how you're involving the community in the process?
Sure. Excellent question. When we started thinking about the project at the very beginning, we said as a government officials, employees, we do have this piece of land between the two wetlands. And we look at all the needs of the utility and the needs of the public, not on the short term, the long range. How can we have the water resources that we needed for the next 30, 40, 50 years? And after a lot of brainstorming internally, we came to that decision that, yes, this is the best way. We're going to create a park that is going to be fed by a drinking water standard coming from our ECLIM system. Then after that, we started talking to the neighbors and the communities around that parcel and see what they want. You should see the reaction when we start talking about that we're going to give you guys another park and it's going to be based on the highest technology in the world. The message was well received. We got a lot of participation already. And actually, as a matter of fact, next week we have 2 large sessions with Cobra associations in the area, which is about 120,000 people leaving that associations. So we got a lot of support internally and externally. And I think public realized that this is the project that we're going to secure everything for them and their children and grandchildren for years to come. The beauty of this project is, which is going to separate it from the project that we have done in the past, is we are able now. We have the technology, it has been tested to bring a safe technology with the minimum energy consumption to produce a very quality water. This was not the case 20 years ago. It was not the case when I was operating 25 years ago, but today is and has been tested. So we bring in a new technology, but it's not a brand new technology. It's already tested. So I think public trusted that type of technology more. So we're not taking any huge risk without thinking about it. But so that's the unique project I'm talking about. In a state, up to 2 years ago, the reclaimed water was a reclaimed water. Governor just put a proposal together and they passed the legislation on it, that the wastewater is no longer called wastewater. The wastewater is another source of water, because they all realize we need to start using the wastewater for more beneficial uses. So a lot of talk in Tallahassee is going on right now, a lot of emphasis to find ways. Hopefully, we're going to be the first one in the state to do something like this, and we can lead other utilities in the state of Florida to get to that point. If I want to get to the specifics, just imagine this: the wastewater going to come from one side in, the drinking water going to go out from the other side with exactly the same quality.
Thank you. And Ali, that's a great reminder that we have to be thinking in new ways, right? We're in new times. We have to be thinking in new ways, and we cannot stay in the same mindset that we were previous. And so the way you're talking and the things that y'all are having to consider resonate. And I hope that everyone can take note that it's okay to think in a way that may not have been acceptable or mainstream in the past, and it creates awesome new opportunities. So thank you for the work you're doing.
Sure. If I can add just a quick thing, just to emphasize on it, even if we produce in a drinking water level water, we're not going to put it to the distribution system for the people to consume it. We're still going to put it in the lake to recharge the groundwater. We're still using the Mother Nature, but we helping the Mother Nature by doing the job for it. So that extra buffer is still going to be there. So all going to be. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And so we have a few more questions, and then we have some great questions in the chat that I want to make sure we get to. So there's actually a question for me for how Energy Foundation is thinking about social innovation and things that we've seen that have kind of moved that work forward. And I'll just say that we're in a moment in, I think, not just the Energy Foundation, but I think, foundations across the board are thinking about new ways in which to support the work that all of you all are talking about. And I think that a lot of people are moving toward where we're getting out of only thinking about progress in one way, right? Where there is the folks that maybe have proximity to power, and there are ways that having voices in rooms that have decision-making power is really important, and that won't fall from the lexicon. But I think that having engagement with communities and really listening, creating opportunities for people to come together and listening, what will benefit them, right? And how can we make sure that they're compensated to engage and see themselves in the work? So, a part of what Energy Foundation has done recently is develop a new mission, vision, and values statement for our work, for our grant making work and our internal and external work in service to the field. And some of the terms that we have incorporated in our values have shown up in various parts of what all three of you have shared today. So we talk about transformational impact, right? That's kind of moving away from what traditionally has been considered the norm and thinking of in new ways. And sometimes that means engaging a community and taking some bold steps to take on some projects that maybe seem different to some folks. And community is a part of our values now. Equity is, I spoke about that in the beginning. Learning, right? Each of you have mentioned kind of the opportunity to listen and then adapt and do something that meets the moment. And I think that's really important as well. And then service. I mentioned service to the field. As a foundation, we're looking for these opportunities to serve. We are not, none of us on this panel are looking to particularly personally gain. It's about the service to the greater work that everyone is working towards. So I'm just really inspired by the connectivity, various parts of the work to move resilience and move communities forward. So just that's my little piece about with our piece of the work at Energy Foundation. And I'd love to follow up with all of you after this, and I hope folks do reach out to you as well. So I'm gonna, let's see what the timing is looking like. Let's see, I will just trying to do some mental math in my head real quick. I'm going to ask the panel and some questions, and if you are interested in answering, please do. And maybe we'll do a couple of those and then kick it to our question and answers. I know I see a couple great ones in the chat right now. So for all of you, anyone that wants to answer, what are some lessons learned that you think can be integrated into community projects aimed at building climate resilience? Lessons learned, anything you want to share?
I have one. So first of all, I wanted to say that I think that one of the things that we could do a better job of is listening. And listening, and the other day I heard the quote that the Chinese listen with their ears, their eyes, and their heart. So you really mean it when you're listening. And I just love that. But I think that we can do a better job at teaching and learning. When you're a big organization like University of Miami or Baptist Health, you have resources. So it's our responsibility to also teach, right? And to share that knowledge. But one of the lessons learned was actually after Hurricane Irma, when it became clear that we did a great job at preparing and planning for the hurricane, but we could have done more to be ready to bounce back quicker as a community at that hyper local level that Joanna mentioned. Because, and the example that I'll give you is that once we were ready to discharge patients from the hospital, when we were given the all clear, no pharmacies were open. So we couldn't safely discharge patients or transition them to home or to wherever they were going because we couldn't fill their prescriptions. So once again, working as a community to make sure that we're all bouncing back quickly.
I would just build on what Michelle said, because I think she's right. It's that, and it actually does, Jamie, it does kind of address one of the questions in the chat about how do you make sure that it's not just listening sessions, but you're actually shaping policy. Like with our sessions, I think the really active engagement of our Office of Resilience team members and the Parks Department team members was really crucial, because when we didn't, there is a whole session to this where people put forward their ideas like very seriously, and it's not just pie in the sky stuff. It's like, well, could we do this? Would this get us closer to the ideal that we'd want to have? And for example, one of the ideas was the fact that bus stops, people, aside from the bus system itself, the stops are hot. They're not necessarily all shaded. You know, they're made of metal that radiates heat. So there was a discussion about, could they get together with Public Works, Parks, and Resilience and start a kind of green infrastructure for for bus stops? That's a very tangible outcome, and it's at a scale that you think of because you're in the neighborhood and you're experiencing it. So I think that the key is having these partnerships where people work together across disciplines, not in silos, and that the people, when you do a private project in architecture world, the first thing that an architect does is to consult with the client. What is it that what is their life like? What do they want? And the public process, it's hard to do that. So I think for all of us, finding a way to make that happen, to make the people who are most involved on the front line in the decision-making process, and that requires a real openness and a willingness. And frankly, it's one of these things where it takes more time up front, but then it's less time later, as opposed to rushing through something and then dealing with reactions later and then having to undo things. So I think that what this whole process has taught is that there are really wonderful ideas that are almost at a really micro scale that can make a really big difference in someone's life. And we have the capacity to do that when we're actually working together as a group. And so finding who should be there, who should be around the table. And it's not an infinite number of people, but it is a focused number of people, and it is a diverse group of perspectives.
Yes, and I can add to it. I think a lot of good conversations already, But in Palm Beach County, we did realize that the climate change is not just the issue for one side of the community or a couple of departments here and there. It's going to impact all of us. It's impacting all of us. So we came together, county formed the cross-department teams, and we have the Office of Resiliency that they sit on all the teams. So we have no longer the silos that perhaps were in operation 20, 30 years ago. Transportation, utilities, fire department, resiliency, we all sit together and we look at the things at the same time. And that's absolutely true. It takes more planning upfront, but if you do that, you're gonna have way less problems than toward the end of the project. For just example, for us, I have a CIP budget of $500 million. That's $500 million for just utility. But when you combine that resources with all the other transportation, all the other segments, you're talking about billions of dollars that we're going to spend in the next 10, 20 years. And to make it more resilient, it's not going to cost you significantly more if you plan ahead. I think that one of the fear that historically a lot of people they had, it was always the cost. But if you plan it right and you plan it ahead, I don't think the cost is really going to be that much higher than what that your project is. So I think communication definitely is a big part of it. Being holistic, having a holistic view, and coming out of those silos. These are the things that we learn, and we move into that direction to minimize these issues.
Thank you. Thank you. And all of those, I appreciate those lessons learned being shared out, because I think everyone across the work can benefit. So thank you. I'm gonna do one more question. It's the magic wand question. If you had a magic wand, what would be your best advice on how to ensure that engagement and intentional integration of co-benefits are built into project design? There was a lot.
You want me to start?
Yeah, you start, Michelle. Go ahead.
So I think the magic wand is for all of these corporations, all of these community partnerships that we're all talking about that are so vital, need to go back and revisit their strategic plans, their action plans. And we need to build an alignment table to making sure that everything that we're doing is aligning with climate resilience, and allow it to not be the afterthought, but part of all of our planning process.
Really good advice, as always. I think I think maybe I would ask everybody like a magic wand that's really doable. It's like a thought experiment where we stop and we realize that all this stuff around us, right? It's not really ours. Like we belong, we came, people did things before us. We need to acknowledge and understand our true histories. And then we need to think about the future. And we need to really understand that we have this stewardship role. And growing up in South Florida, I was always struck by how, neighborhoods would just pop up. As a little kid, we used to play on construction sites, and the concrete trucks, have this debris sometimes that they leave when they go away, and those would make islands, and we would play on them. And we kind of thought the world of South Florida was like a big sand lot with little concrete islands, because that was what it was when I was growing up in the 1960s. And when I began to understand the history of it, the nations, the First Nations who preceded us, the landscape that had gotten wiped out, you start to realize there's a very short term, and even now in the climate world, my colleague Liz Plater-Zyberg had a class where she does a climate resilience class, and one of the things that they talk about is the investment cycle, because if you're building something to sell it in a year, then you price that project very differently than if you build that project and imagine that, generations are going to be enjoying it, and you're not looking to just dump it after 12 months. So I feel like if we could have a magic wand that all of a sudden everybody's like, Ebenezer Scrooge in the Christmas future, I think people could wake up and say, wow, okay, I can change this, right? I can change, and I can change what's around me.
And I think I have more than just one magic. Maybe I have a list of the magics, but the one that I like the most, and this is really coming from the experience working on several large projects that has a lot to do with climate change, is to get the people to look at the facts and data and let the data and facts to drive the project, not necessarily my opinion or what I believe or not. I found that a lot of times, a lot of these projects that we want to do with the long-term vision, not going through because not necessarily everybody's on the same page. To get them on the same page, I always ask everybody, leave out all your opinions. This is the data, this is the facts, and this is start from here. And we usually get the best result with that approach.
Amy, would it be okay if we go back to the healthcare question that popped up?
Absolutely.
We have this question, does the healthcare system really have a major role to play in reducing greenhouse gases, or are you more focused on dealing with health consequences of climate change? And I wanted to come back to that because Baptist Health has an incredible commitment to this, and they're part of the Healthcare Without Harm. I don't know, Michelle, if you want to talk about that, and then I wanted to add to it in terms of what we've seen in healthcare systems across the country.
Sure. Well, I think we have an absolute role to play. I mean, look at our name. It's called healthcare, right? And I think that our responsibility is prevention, and we'll stand ready to treat. But I think our primary role is to help people understand how to stay well, whether it's through nutrition, whether it's through climate. I think that it's not just that anchor role responsibility, it's a community responsibility. We often say how we were welcomed into the community where we are. And when you feel welcomed, you feel that you're a part of it. And so we're not going anywhere. It's in our best interest to make sure that we're building something for generations to stay, whether it's in all of these areas. So you talk about education, just for a moment, what's our role in education? It's not just to teach graduate medical education students to become clinicians and physicians. It is to make sure that our community is graduating, that they are getting a job where they can live, right? And they're receiving a livable wage. So all of these components, all of these social determinants of health that we constantly talk about have become part of our responsibility. And I hope that answered your question. But yes, we're involved in so many organizations. I mean, food philosophy, just think about what's going to happen to our food supply with regards to climate change. So there's an interest there for us with regards to nutrition. Mm-hmm. And making sure that our community and all of Miami-Dade County, right, is able to receive clean water, clean air, and good food to eat.
And to that end, Baptist is also, so the Healthcare Without Harm is a group of healthcare systems around the country. Baptist is one of the leaders in this, also Cleveland Clinic. And the goal is to bring hospital systems to a kind of net zero, and then maybe even, to do a kind of carbon negative, right? So they're looking at green roofs, they're looking at solar panels, they're looking at all of the kinds of built infrastructure. But then some healthcare systems like Providence, Rod Hochman out in Providence, is taking another step forward to say, and Baptist is, I think you had something to do with this, Michelle, when you were working with Eric Valle on that kind of community planning in West Kendall, but to say, let's look at what are some of the key contributors to emissions. Transportation is huge. And in South Florida, we drive everywhere because our plan, our early development plan was if you own a piece of land, you get to develop it. And maybe it connects to somebody else and maybe it doesn't. And it was under old zoning systems where single uses were there. So you pretty much had to drive absolutely everywhere. Many people that live in South Florida still do. So the hospital is looking at the people who work there, as Michelle was talking about. Well, is it possible for hospitals to provide affordable housing for the people who work there who could then walk to work? And could there be a school where the kids could walk to school? And then could we have parks to support that? And so Miami-Dade County has launched a kind of system of planning where they're looking at creating neighborhood centers in the midst of what we all call sprawl, which is suburban development, where it's just really housing with nothing but housing around. So if you want to walk to a store, it's a long, hot walk, right? So this idea that you might come in and be able to create neighborhood centers where people could get the basics. Michelle talked about Hurricane Irma. If you have to drive and there's no gas station, this is a real problem. But if you could walk to a neighborhood center and supplies could be delivered there and medical care could be offered there, and those could be vaccine centers for people in pandemics as we've experienced, there's a whole different alleviation of all of the greenhouse gases that come from our entire transportation network of South Florida. So hospitals as healthy campuses that are greener, that use, the wastewater that is no longer wastewater that Ali was talking about, that in fact, this kind of net zero water that you just are recycling the water, that we're, refiltering, that we're replenishing our aquifer, that we're sort of coming to a balance with the salinization of our drinking water. These are all things that healthcare is a major model and a catalyst for change. And so I think that what Baptist is trying to do around its facilities is happening in other healthcare systems around the country. And I think this is a really important step forward. And if universities could take the same step, I know, at the University of Miami, we have a suburban community around us and we have US1. So that creates certain boundaries for us. But at the end of the day, if we have self-sufficient communities dotted across our landscape, I think we're going to be a greener and healthier place.
Thank you. Thank you. And I want to make sure everyone had a chance to answer that question, but otherwise I'm happy to move on. We have a couple more. There's a comment that I want to read off because I think it's great. And then there's a pretty specific question that I will get to. But first, this commenter said this is not a question, but they wanted to share that I have been to Green Cay. It is an amazing engineering work and a great example of a sustainable infrastructure that benefits the community, environment, and wildlife that it attracts. I encourage designers and public officials to see this site, and that's from Hector Eleman. So thank you, Hector, for that comment. And then we have a pretty specific question that I'm happy for anyone to address if you wish. Does asset management play a part in planning to build strong, inclusive communities?
I think I can answer that question. That's sort of like what we have done. I gotta answer that question in the context of the utility. So think about the utility like Palm Beach County. We do have about worth of about $5 billion worth of asset under our control. Without having an asset management program or taking care of what you have, you're not going to be sustainable. You're not going to be able to project what you want to do, and you're going to just drive the cost of operation to the roof. So that's across the board. When you don't have the resources that you want and you're not efficient, typically those operations, they're not caring about the environment or the climate change neither. So we realized that we want to be the most efficient that we can, and that's why we adopted the ISO, and we were bold enough to go and get certified as the first one in the nation. And now there are utilities from Texas, California, and they reaching out to us to follow what we did. But that's on the long term. The cost of any project is really in your asset. If you look at the long life cycle of the cost of any project that you do, usually the cost of design and construction is only 20%. 80% is in asset management and maintenance for the next 20, 30 years, whatever the life of the project is. So absolutely, it's going to make you more efficient. It's going to release more resources that you can put it back in the environment and do a more robust and better projects.
Could I ask you a question about that, Ali? Is that okay, Jamie? I want to take that up at one more second. One of the challenges that I see in South Florida is, some enormous percentage of our budgets, something like, I don't know, somewhere between 70 and 80%, depending on the municipality or the county, comes from our property taxes, right? So we have kind of every incentive to bring in new people, right? And we need them because we have a lid on how much we can raise property taxes. So the new people come and pay the new higher rates, but then they want new services. So it's kind of like we're in this sort of catch up cycle. Do you see, are you looking in Palm Beach County at any alternative models that you think can kind of break that cycle? Or Jamie, from your perspective at the Energy Foundation, I think Michelle and I witnessed this, but you all are in the mix of what can be done about it. Talk about magic wands. What would your magic wand be for that problem?
The magic wand, and that's a really excellent question, because that's a problem that a lot of government, they facing it. We made that decision years ago. It was my bosses 20, 30 years ago. So we separated ourselves from the taxpayers. So we are an enterprise department with the county. So that means we're not receiving no tax money from the taxpayers. We pretty much, we run like a business, same thing like a hospital or any other organization. We provide services, and then we charge people, and then we get the money, we put it back and reinvest it in the system. So I think the best model for any government, if they can afford it, is to separate, at least for the utility perspective, separate the utility, let them to be on their own. And believe me, if they run it properly, I think for the most part, they can be self-sustained and continue. We have no pressure on the taxpayer. Specifically for Palm Beach County, we do all these projects. If you look at the cost, the monthly cost that we charge our customers, believe it or not, we the most, or one of the top 3 when it comes to most affordable in the state of Florida. I think that's the way to go. That's the model that I see. That's the magic wand, to be sustainable.
Jamie, does that coincide with what the Energy Foundation takes as a kind of view of growth in South Florida?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, and this is just complete transparency. We're in a moment where we have the opportunity to take a step back and really learn from these types of discussions, because we have definitely noticed the great enthusiasm amongst our grantees to really dig in and learn what not only local governments are finding to be effective methods, but also what local communities, right? And I suspect that includes Palm Beach County and the surrounding areas. So, I mean, I told folks initially when I was joining this panel that my main goal is to listen and learn and hopefully be able to share something. But mostly today, I've definitely been able to learn, and I hope we can all continue this conversation. We're wrapping up time. I know that the panelist information, I believe, is being shared with everyone. And so I encourage y'all, if you have further questions after today, after this panel, to definitely reach out. I'm also happy to chat with anyone that's interested in chatting with me. But overall, Joanna, Michelle, Ali, thank you all so much for taking the time to talk with everyone today and share your knowledge, sharing your lessons learned and your magic wand moments and wishes. This has been great, and I hope everyone, I'm sure everyone feels the same. So thank you, and I will kick it back to Dr. Leach.
Thank you, Jamie. And thank you to all of our panelists. That was an absolutely wonderful discussion. I really like all of this discussion of community engagement, which really brings home the theme of this year's summit, which is togetherness. Next up, we're going to have our very last keynote speaker, Crystal Bergerman from the US Department of Housing and Urban Development. To join that next session, please go back to the CVent portal and click on the link for the next session. Thank you all, and goodbye.